Welcome to the Psychology Club Podcast, brought to you by Vicente Martinez High School.
Hey, welcome to the Psychology Club Podcast. I'm your host, Gavin, today, and we are interviewing Mary from the Wellness and School Program. Welcome, Mary. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to participate in your podcast.
Thank you. So, we got a couple questions, like, what is the Wellness and School Program?
Yeah. So the Wellness in Schools program is available through the Contra Costa County Office of Education. And so we really work to leverage and expand upon existing school-based behavioral health services and supports. And we really work to ensure that students are receiving access to those different supports and getting everything that they need to thrive, right? So we do this through partnering with the different school districts and the school sites throughout Contra Costa County. And we provide mental health education, awareness, and then understanding, as well as linkages to resources so that all of the needs, the mental health and wellness needs of our schools can be met. And our support includes things like professional development, mental health collaboratives, as well as wellness clubs too, which is just like what you're doing here through the Psychology Club. And we have much more that we offer as well. And then for my role specifically, we have liaisons that support the different regions of our big county. So I lead the efforts in East County. And I also support our wellness clubs, those peer-to-peer supports, and just strive to champion mental health across Contra Costa.
All right, so my name is Will, and I had a question. How is Wellness in Schools program funded?
Yeah, so the Wellness in Schools program, we actually call it WISP for short. So if it's easier, you can say that, but WISP is funded through the Mental Health Student Services Act, or MHSSA, and that is a grant that's issued through the California Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission, and the acronym there is MHSOAC. So our program was created through a partnership between the Contra Costa County Office of Education and the Contra Costa County Behavioral Health Services.
Okay.
My name's Alyssa. Why should schools care about student mental health?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And mental health is really directly tied to academic success. So when our students are struggling mentally or emotionally, it's going to affect a lot of things. That can include like the focus, memory, engagement, and even performance. So supporting mental health, it helps students to manage stress. It helps them to build invaluable life skills that they can carry with them in the future, like emotional resilience. It also equips them with the tools so they can manage stressful situations, like anxiety or just tough situations that may arise in our life, right? And it also helps to perform better academically. So early intervention is another thing too that's very important because it can prevent like challenges from evolving into lifelong struggles, and it creates a more positive school environment as well. So when our students are feeling safe and supported, they're likely to engage more so with their peers, their teachers, or other staff on campus. And then that helps, right, to decrease things like bullying. It improves attendance, better relationships with people on campus, and just a more inclusive environment overall. And then like long term, when our schools are caring about student mental health, it's fostering these initiatives that allow students to stay in school, to graduate, to lead fulfilling lives when you go off into the world, right? So it's super important that our schools care and address mental health because it allows students to thrive. It boosts the academic success, it instills important life skills, and improves behaviors and supports them not only in the moment, but well into the future so that you can all be set up for success.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What is the biggest mental health issue facing students today?
Yeah, another great question. And, with that, I just want to acknowledge first that every student is different, right? And they all have their own unique experiences and thoughts on this. So just to kind of preface, the answer that I'm going to give is not a one-size-fits-all, right? So that being said, through my own reflections in my work and experiences with students, I can say that anxiety is one of those things that has come up as being like a prevalent mental health issue that students are facing today. And I would say that anxiety is one of those things that has been on the rise, especially in recent years. And it's fueled by a lot of different things like academic pressure, social media, even uncertainty about like the future, and even global issues too. So many students experience like constant stress, and they could be worrying about school, maybe different peer relationships, and even things in society, right? So this can lead to a lot of different things. Like it can lead to physical symptoms, even like fear of failure, and then maybe difficulty concentrating on things. And it can even be like avoiding school or just withdrawing from activities altogether, so like isolation. And there's a lot of pressure, right, to succeed academically and just socially, right, that it can be very overwhelming. So we know that anxiety is something that is in all students, but it's especially mostly prevalent in our high school students. So addressing this topic is really important, right, for prioritizing that student mental health and just ensuring that academic performance.
So how do you think the pandemic impacted mental health?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has had a really deep and profound impact on mental health and the world. And I think there's a lot of ways that it's impacted mental health. Some things that come to mind are like increased anxiety and stress, right? So the pandemic brought a lot of uncertainty. It brought health concerns. It also brought on remote learning, right? All of those things can bring heightened stress. Another thing too is the isolation, the social isolation that came of it. There was a lot of disruption to the social interactions, and it left many students and people feeling isolated and disconnected, and of course that's going to impact our emotional well-being. Other things too, it impacted like our sleep, right? It disrupted sleep, and it disrupted routines. So there were a lot of changes in people's daily routines that led to different sleep disturbances or just difficulty like with managing time, again, increasing those anxiety levels. Another thing too is depression, right? There was increased depression because of that isolation, those lack of routines, and there was a lot of academic pressure too during that time. Grief and loss, right? That's another one that came up. Many people faced grief with losing like loved ones, or even dealing with illness. And at that time, there really were a lot of limited ways that people could grieve and mourn together. There was also a lot of impacts on vulnerable groups too, right? I think the pandemic, it's important to acknowledge it impacted every single person, right? But especially for people who maybe had pre-existing conditions, so stuff before the pandemic emerged, especially if they were facing mental health issues or anything of that nature, it caused there to be like limited access in them reaching the support that they needed. I think another thing too is the remote learning, right? Many people had increased screen time through like Zoom or Teams or whatever platform they were using, and that leads to like emotional burnout as well, just from that remote learning and just the workload that came with it. Another thing too is looking at like the barriers that were happening with mental health support, right? There was a lot of limited access, a lot of things were shut down or were not operating like at full capacity. So people couldn't get access to like in-person counseling or really any of the support they needed. And even if there were supports, it wasn't always effective for everyone, right? So I think all in all, the pandemic, it was really a traumatic experience, and it's something that people are still affected by today. So with that too, I want to acknowledge that the pandemic, it did bring more mental health awareness though, because it did raise a lot of those issues, bringing them to the surface. And that sparked more conversations around mental health. And then it also resulted in like students, parents, and families like advocating for better support and resources. And it was also a time where people were beginning to explore and develop different coping strategies, building resilience, and then even exploring like creative ways to connect with each other.
So what can schools do to help better mental health?
Yeah, I think schools play a really important role in this. And to support student mental health, some of the things that I think are most important, right, are going to be creating a supportive environment. When we create spaces that are rooted in empathy and openness, we're creating these spaces where students feel comfortable to be themselves and to talk about their mental health without any like fear of judgment. And this can be done through so many different things, right? Maybe it's you're spreading awareness campaigns, having signage on campus that lets you know it's okay to talk about mental health and seek support. Maybe it's peer support programs or like wellness clubs, like again here through the Psychology Club. It's building like strong relationships between our teachers and our students, things like that. I would say another big one is just providing mental health resources, right? With that, we want to increase access to our counselors, to therapists. Some schools have like wellness centers or wellness rooms, like increasing access to those spaces. I think really building the education that we put into health classes or any classrooms on campus actually. And just mental health staff that are working with individuals and even in group capacities too, right? Resource sharing is really important, as well as even like offering workshops and listening to your community and what it is that they need. Maybe workshops around like stress management or coping skills or emotional regulation, right? I think other things too, I'm not sure if you all know what social emotional learning is, but integrating that, in short, we call it SEL. But that social emotional curriculum, incorporating that into our schools, it builds emotional resilience. Other things too is in the schools, like encouraging breaks and community building, right? We want to promote balance, like giving students breaks throughout the day, encouraging participation in extracurricular activities or clubs on campus, because it gives students the opportunity to practice balance, gives you all some chance to relax, right, decompress, just have fun and connect with others at school, right? And another big one too is addressing the stigma. There's still a stigma that surrounds mental health. So we're combating that stigma by opening up conversations about the topic and promoting like messaging that shows that reaching out and seeking support is really a sign of strength, not a weakness. And I would say too, even engaging in like collaboration, right? So schools can really further their efforts with mental health by collaborating and building partnerships. It can be engaging like parents, engaging students, families, and even other community partners or resources out in your local area. Again, just making sure that you all have access to what you need to thrive. So those are just some of the approaches that I would consider that schools can utilize to just make students feel supported, welcomed, and ensuring that those mental health needs are prioritized.
If so, how does homework impact mental health?
Yeah, so I definitely think mental health is impacted by homework, and I think it can lead to things like stress and anxiety, right? With the stress part of it, like deadlines and the pressure to complete assignments, it can create chronic stress, right? Going through that year after year, definitely affecting our mental and our physical health. I think homework too, it leads to minimal downtime, right? So oftentimes students can be overloaded with homework or busy work, that they may not have the time that you need to kind of give back and replenish yourself, right? To relax, engage in hobbies, practice that self-care, and spend time with loved ones. So that balance is going to be really important so people don't reach like burnout or isolation. Other things too, like sleep disruption, right? If we're staying up really late to complete our homework and all of our assignments, we're not getting the sleep that our body really needs to recover and to show up fully as ourselves the next day at school, right? And it can impair our concentration and again, negatively impacting that mental health. Other things to touch on too is even like perfectionism, right? And anxiety. Some students really have that desire to like want to do well on every assignment, but it can lead to perfectionism and even like performance anxiety. And that fear of not meeting those expectations, it can really make homework overwhelming for some. And again, leading to that mental health strain. And then even like lower self-esteem too, right? So struggling with homework sometimes, especially if we're not accessing that help or getting the support we need, it can cause people to feel like inadequate, like they're not good enough, and then they have like self-doubt. And that lowers the confidence in them, and it increases those mental health challenges. And you know, I know homework is a part of our school, it's a part of our learning, right? And there are good things that can come from homework, but I think the most important thing is to remember like to set boundaries, to kind of pay attention to your workload. If you feel like your stress is increasing, pay attention to that and seek support if you need it. Like taking breaks too, like don't underestimate like taking a few steps away, like a couple minutes to go outside, go on a walk, be with nature, practice some deep breathing. That can really do like wonders for yourself and your mental health. Practicing time management too, and utilizing your resources maybe to break down assignments so that it's more manageable for you. And then of course practicing self-care, right? So whatever those activities are that recharge you and refuel your energy, like tap into that as a way to manage the different pressures and stress that can come with homework. And celebrate your wins too, right? Whether it's big or small, everything you're doing is progress and it deserves to be celebrated.
Thank you.
I had one more question, and it's how do individual teachers impact students' mental health?
Yeah. I think our teachers really make a very important impact on our students, right? They play a key role in providing support to them, guidance, and emotional safety too, right? So again, our teachers play a role in creating that supportive environment. This means making that space positive and inclusive for everyone, and making it a space where students feel safe, they feel valued and seen, right? And this fosters that trust and that openness. Another thing too is providing like emotional support and just serving as a trusted adult. So teachers can offer like a listening ear, and they can check in on students when they're struggling, right? Even if it's just a brief moment of reassurance too. And for some students, teachers are that trusted adult, right? So they can really pave the way for these students by demonstrating and modeling like healthy coping skills. And teachers can be that person that students turn to for support in times of need. I think teachers too, in their classrooms and just in the school environment as well, they can set realistic expectations for students, right? They can reduce stress and anxiety for their students, like in their classrooms, by setting like clear and manageable goals for them. Setting these realistic expectations, it avoids like excess pressure on students so that they'll feel more confident, and it gives more opportunities for success in the future. Another thing that teachers can model is that growth mindset. And again, with that social emotional learning, right? So teachers have this powerful influence where they can show you that, you know, as challenges might arise in your life, you can use them as opportunities for growth and learning rather than seeing them as failures. And that social emotional curriculum, it really helps students to build healthy coping, like to build up your toolbox, to build self-esteem, and to just develop positive relationships, and just to understand resilience and emotional intelligence as well. And then our teachers can intervene early on too if they see signs where students might be struggling. When we equip our teachers with training and education and like empathy and understanding, they can support those students and kind of help navigate them to where they need to go, right? Maybe that's getting connected to the school counselor, or connected to that wellness center space, or a case manager, or whoever that trusted or supported adult may be in your life. And I think one of the biggest things that teachers can do is give encouragement, right? They really leave lasting impacts when they give positive reinforcement to students. They offer that praise and recognition, and they recognize the effort that you all put forward, right? So when students are receiving that, it boosts self-esteem, it boosts motivation, and our overall mental well-being.
What are some ways other schools-based mental health clubs, like the Psychology Club, promote positive mental health on school campuses?
Yeah. And that's an excellent question that you bring up there. So just like the club you have here, the Psychology Club, it's so important in providing positive mental health, right? And it's important because it spreads mental health awareness. It offers support, and it creates empathetic and stigma-free environments too. And it fosters a community where we prioritize mental health, right? So that's how I would say like the importance of the Psychology Club comes into play. Some of the other ways though that I've seen our school-based mental health clubs promote mental health would be through like wellness activities or different initiatives that they put onto campus. So through my role with the Wellness in Schools program, we are partnered with a lot of clubs who are affiliated with other community partners. For example, like Bring Change to Mind or Erica's Lighthouse. And those resources, they oftentimes have their own portals where they support clubs directly with a lot of different resources, right? Like guidebooks, activity and event ideas, different interactive programs, curriculum, and so much more. So we see a lot of clubs utilizing those tools to promote positive mental health. But, don't ever underestimate just the power of opening up conversations around this topic, because by building that dialogue, you're sending that message that mental health is universal. We all have mental health. It's just as important as our physical health, and that it's okay to talk about it and seek support if you need it. There's no shame in that. And I've seen clubs host like impactful workshops to start this dialogue. Some people choose to bring in like guest speakers, just like how you're bringing in partners to enhance your podcast. Some do like assemblies, resource fairs where they bring in different community-based organizations, creating mental health awareness campaigns, and just launching activities on school grounds too, maybe during club meetings or during lunchtime or when like students have breaks. And then kind of on that topic of wellness activities too, I've seen a lot of our clubs really embrace creativity and come up with different projects and events covering so many different topics like mindfulness, stress relief, self-love and self-care, movement, arts and entertainment, and then of course like mental health awareness, advocacy, and reducing that stigma too. And just to kind of like throw out a couple of ideas, like from what I've seen schools come up with, is there was one school that partnered with their mural club on campus. They all came together to unite, and they bonded through art, and they painted a lovely mural outside of their wellness center that just promotes that everyone is welcome and everyone belongs. I've seen schools develop like a rose event where they utilize their lunchtime period and they connected with their key club on campus. They made paper roses, and they attached like little positive affirmations that said like, you are enough, you are worthy, the effort you're putting in is paying off. And then they would give those roses to students during like midterms, just to kind of keep the spirits up and to just spread this wave of kindness and encouragement through the school community. Another one even did like, let's taco about mental health taco party. They did it during lunchtime. They all brought out tacos, they enjoyed it, and then they had meaningful mental health conversations. So I've seen a lot of different stuff like that. And you probably heard me talk a little bit about how they connected with this club and that club. So there's a lot of power and partnership, right? Just like what you all are doing here through this podcast. And then with that too, I've seen clubs even hold like more impactful events where they've had like presentations where they brought in like community partners. Some schools brought in like speakers that spoke about mental health, talking about like some signs that maybe some mental health challenges are there, and talking about how you can support yourself, how you can support others, and just different resources to tap into. And people have even shared like their own lived experience and connections to mental health. And I've even seen like mentorship opportunities too. You know, the really cool thing about wellness clubs is you can have them at high schools, middle schools, and even elementary schools too. So some schools, like their older students, connect with the younger students to talk about mental health, spread that awareness, and build healthy coping with them. We had one school that read social emotional learning books. The older students read those books to the younger students. So those are some examples. And then another one that I wanted to just shout out was our schools even look at different events and activities that are available through the community, right? There's something called the Directing Change Awards event, where they invite schools from all across California to create short films. And they have different categories and everything. And one of our schools actually from this county, they submitted a film called Unfolding Hope, and they actually placed second place statewide in all of California in that mental health category. So I share all these things just to kind of let you know that the possibilities are truly endless, right? It's really amazing because our students are the driving force of these wellness clubs, and it's so important that the students feel empowered and uplifted to just be creative, to tap into their resources and explore partnerships. And you can tap into whatever resources you have, right? Maybe that's connecting with your teachers, your counselors, other clubs on campus. Maybe it's even outsourcing too. Maybe you bring in partners to lead an activity. I've seen some schools reach out and bring in like therapy dogs or yoga sessions or journaling or meditation, just so many wonderful things. So kind of think about those things as you continue your work with the Psychology Club too, because the possibilities are truly endless. And then, yeah, that's all I have for that question. But I definitely have some questions that I would love to just ask you all.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'd love to learn more about the Psychology Club and just how this club has impacted each of you and how it's impacted your school.
I think it's a big impact on our school because it teaches everybody it gets everybody aware of like mental health and what's normal and what's okay and what you should look for help in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's powerful.
I feel like our school makes it easier to like reach out for help.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of trusted adults you could go to.
Mm-hmm. That's really important.
Yeah, I agree with that part, especially like going to Miss Berner. Yeah, she helps a lot.
And I think the psychology club, impact on myself teaches me a little bit more about my own mental health and coping strategies. And we have our counselor that gives a lot of resources out to all the students to show and support us for mental health. We're always allowed to come in here, talk to her, we have yoga. She also has given us a bunch of apps, so like even when we're not in school, we still have resources if we can't reach out to her. I think the clubs had impact on the school because it just shows everyone else about different mental health that maybe they don't know about and they haven't learned about, and so they're more aware of different mental health issues in the world and they can understand it a little bit better.
She has a lot of resources for us all the time, so I agree with Will.
That's amazing. I mean, that just shows like how you all are championing mental health and how it's even impacting you personally as well. That's so wonderful to hear. Are there any other ways that your schools are supporting mental health besides the psychology club? I know you shared a little bit about like resource sharing and having some trusted adults. Are there any other ways that your school supports student mental health?
We have assemblies, like we'll have guest speakers come in and talk about mental health and different things that cause mental health. And we also have like I said, there's yoga, an amazing counselor, like probably one of the best school counselors I've ever had.
Oh, I love that.
And it's just like a safe space, like the school, kind of the environment of the school makes it like easy to talk about what's going on with your life. You don't feel like you need to just keep everything away. You can
Like
speak,
bottled up.
yeah, you can speak to people here.
That's so powerful. And I'm so glad that that's the experience that you're getting at this school. What about like each of you? What do you do for like your self-care, right? I mean, being in this space, you're promoting mental health, you're championing that initiative. I'd love to know like what coping skills or resources you all have used that you enjoy and you would like to share with peers, or what you do just to practice self-care.
Personally, I just take a break from my phone and just like, I hang out with Alyssa sometimes and we just take breaks from our phones and just do us,
That's good.
A break from reality.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
I like to do the same. Just it's hard because like once you get in that stage, it's hard to you don't want to go out nowhere. But that's the thing. You just gotta try to go out before you get to that stage. So I like to just go like hang out with family and all.
Yeah, the power of connection, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then last question, I just want to know what your aspirations or hopes are for the Psychology Club in the future.
Well, I'm leaving this year, but I hope like students that are in the club that aren't seniors, they continue with the podcast next year, and hopefully they can find more people that come here to participate in the podcast and just keep it going and show support so the podcast can keep going, because I think this is one of the best clubs that club ideas we've had on campus.
Yeah.
So I think that we should keep it going.
Yeah, like continuing that legacy.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good idea for future kids or even the ones for next year. So
Awesome. Wow, that's amazing. Well, those were my questions, and I just want to thank you all again for having me in this space. I feel so honored to be here with all of you, to learn about your school, your psychology club, and I look forward to collaborating more in the future as well.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for answering our question.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for telling us more about wellness and school programs and for being a champion for youth mental health. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more great mental health content. We'll see you next time.
Smash that like button. Oh.